The presentation was entitled Digitalisation, Turning Threats into Opportunities, but our marketing department told me that was too negative. So I have turning challenges into opportunities. I learned very early in program management, choose your battles, and that wasn't one I was prepared to go for. Okay, so through the course of this, I'm going to focus really on where our thinking has come as a COMEX in Arval. And what is clear is things are changing. And if you want to look and imagine going forward what's going to change, start by looking backwards. And imagine 10 years ago what we had and operated around us, and then see what we have today. And the mobile smartphone is a very, very good example of what's changing and what will change in the future. In 2008 was the launch of the first smartphone. And now we see that over 50% of connections of mobile technology is via smartphone. And by 2020, that's anticipated to be at the peak point of 70 to 80%. And when you look at your children, if you have them, or people of the younger generation, these guys have grown up knowing nothing else but smartphones. Everything is via their smartphone. And again, by 2020, it's anticipated that the data transmission through these smartphones will increase tenfold. And that's not just my daughter on Netflix, but that's everybody. And it's completely changing the way that people interact, both socially and in commerce. So, let's just start by going through the journey of looking at what could be the future of cars. And if you read everything that comes out, and you believe even half of what comes out, well, in fact, it's quite a disturbing picture. The main features of our business, the revenue streams from the service, maintenance and repairs, the services we offer to drivers, the revenues from accident management and repairs will disappear, because cars won't have accidents anymore. They don't need repairing as frequently. In fact, we may not even have drivers. And I read something at the beginning of May from Warren Buffett. It was an interview with Warren Buffett and Bill Gates, and I think it was referenced earlier about changing insurance model with autonomous cars. And it could be a major, major change. And whilst in UK business, for leasing business, insurance may not be a big business, for those of us who have operations in continental Europe, it's a huge value stream, the insurance. And we started talking about pay-as-you-drive insurance. And then we start talking about pay how you drive insurance. And now we're talking about maybe no insurance at all. And we've already seen manufacturers like Volvo and Mercedes confirm that they will take responsibility for any failures in the technology that they've provided in their future autonomous cars. And so the doom continues. There'll be no revenue, no fuel cards, because people will charge at home in their magic electric vehicles. There'll be mobility budgets, and people will choose from sharing a car, and they'll move from ownership to usership. And Bloomberg predict by 2022, electric vehicle costs will at least be in parity with the internal combustion engines, which will be the real lift for this type of vehicle. So, to make it even worse, okay, we have the growth of megacities, smart cities, the mayor of Paris and her hatred of diesel. Amongst many other things, we have congestion charging, we have some little fiscal initiatives coming up, I think we're going to discuss later today, that may have an impact in our business. The megacities is quite interesting, because more and more of the world's populations will be concentrated in urban environments. Megacities are those of populations of 5 million or more, and in the 1950s globally there were 8, in 2000 there were 37, and in 2015 there were 58. And so the importance of connected cities, smart cities, and being able to manage the congestion is going to be pretty key. Okay, so doom and gloom or otherwise. Well, that's kind of a bit too generic, a bit too brushing, a bit too broad statement. So, for the traditionalists amongst us, and there may be a few, we had a look at the kind of profiles where this type of model may not fit. The sharing environment, if you think of a van driver with the tools in the back of his van, I'm sure he's going to be delighted at the idea of taking them out at each job and then finding another vehicle to put them back in so that he can release his vehicle during his idle time. So there are still communities of people, perhaps rapid response, utility services, that they would prefer the reliability of ensuring a vehicle properly tooled than the concepts of saving some money during idle time and sharing vehicles. You also have the concept of unpredictable events. Even with autonomous vehicles, all perfectly mapping the roads and the terrain around them, we still have storms, hailstones, etc. We still have things that go wrong. And humans who interact with things under control tend to be unpredictable in themselves. You also have drivers that are just not in the place where the mobility options are. We talked about 60% in urban populations, but that means 40% who are not in urban populations. And we have top managers who still have to manage all of this, who've got better things to do. So there's still some space for us. And then the last one at the bottom there is what we mustn't forget, is some people actually like to drive. And so whilst there are populations, part of the populations who are very, very happy with sharing the vehicles or using other mobility solutions, some people do like to drive. Okay, so van drivers. Oh, actually, let me go back to that. This one's quite interesting when you talk the little graph there. When you look at the complexity of cars in terms of unpredictable events, the average car is made up of more than 30,000 parts, and in 2013 there were 20 million recalls. In 2015 there were 50 million recalls. So there's more parts and therefore more things that need to be managed. Also, interestingly enough, which is this little graph here, is the amount of lines of code in the software in a car. And for a modern high-end car, it has over 100 million lines of code. That's more than the space shuttle. That gives us hope from the first video. And it's more than Microsoft Office, and even more than Facebook, including its back office. So there's a very, very complex environment which still needs to be managed. Okay, so van drivers. This is quite an interesting market because we've got, uniquely, we're seeing, when you look at the growth in passenger cars, we're seeing a growth in LCVs forecast to 2020, which is slightly higher. So there's definitely something in here for the traditionalists. It doesn't mean that they're free from digitalisation, not at all. It just means that perhaps the digital solutions that we're offering are not a major shift, but more of an incremental, value-driven benefit to them doing what they do today. So perhaps route finding or route planning or congestion avoidance type technologies, which will help make their lives more easy and more efficient. So we still have some hope. We also have our rural driver. And actually, rural drivers quite like to be rural. And there are fewer mobility solutions. And in fact, multimodality means probably your car or you walk. So these can be places where connecting the car, connecting the workplace, and finding digital solutions around existing leasing products are probably not to be ignored. And rural solutions are also interesting when you look at the increasing congestion rates in our big cities. London in 2014 was the world's most congested city, with drivers wasting 96 hours, and that was up 14 hours from the previous year. So as a community, I think we have still got some packaging and some solutions for communities of drivers that are not in the urban environments. However, the shift to supporting the urban driver is very, very real. And we've seen from the 50s urbanization to the 2000s suburbanization to the 2015 network city to the 2020 megacities. These are real challenges for urban planners. And digital solutions do provide new opportunities for combining mobility solutions with the traditional methods that we see. And it's very, very important that we look to integrate what we're doing with the troubles and the tribulations of communities in these environments. So, big changes to come. And finally, when we look at unpredictable events, I think somebody, one of the opening videos mentioned it this morning. Whatever you're doing, whether it's electric vehicles or petrol vehicles or other events, mistakes, weather, difficult issues, safety checks, the key is going to be for those who master the data to predict, to observe quickly, and to react. And again, these are opportunities that we are experienced in and have the data available in our industry. So, when we look at challenges the city planners have got to face, what's interesting to see is some research that was done by McKinsey's, and what they identified in automotive revenue globally is that the dark blue is the traditional making cars, which will grow 2% per annum largely in emerging economies, take-up of cars. The light blue is the after-sales, the servicing, similar level of growth. But the gold block, the $1,500 billion, is what they estimate are new revenue streams by 2030 from connected services, car-sharing services, other infotainment type of services. And this is the piece of the pie that we have to decide if we're interested in or not. Whether you believe it's that amount or not, even if they're in error by 50%, there's still something there, and you can imagine it's real. Again, if you go back to your own in-house labs, I would call that your sitting room with your teenagers, this is very, very real opportunity in terms of where potential revenue streams have come. So for me, it's up to us whether we believe it, and it's up to us whether we want to be a part of it. So, as leasing players, we had a look, generically, what we're good at. And I'm sure in many of your companies, certainly in our company, we have a lot of people who love cars, who know a lot about cars, everything about them, in fact, and they'd be more than happy to discuss it with you for days. So we like to badge that up in marketing terms as expert advice. We're also very experienced at aggregating services, and again, earlier we heard about the importance of collaboration. Maybe we don't always feel like we collaborate with each other, but broadly speaking, we have operated in an industry where we collaborate with our partners to provide aggregated solutions to our end clients. And we also know how to control those costs and those risks. We know about total cost of ownership, and we know about optimizing the range of services appropriate for the client's needs. And very importantly, we're used to managing the data on behalf of the clients. So in terms of the challenges ahead, we do think that we have some really good competencies to address them. So here's a little bit about what we've been thinking. As you can see from the little stop signs, it's top secret. I'm told that I'm amongst friends. Okay, so the first model. This really is about looking at stock and flow. We own many cars as leasing players, and we provide them to people who have jobs that need cars, that are on the move, but not all the time. Some of the time, quite often, a lot of the time, if they're perk cars, those cars are idle. But actually there's a need, okay? Maybe it's a utility vehicle, maybe it's a sales guy, maybe it's a perk car, okay? And the digitalisation from this point of view is quite nice to have. It's the types of things we've talked about, where you've got your route planning, maybe some driver behavioural monitoring, maybe some reduction in insurance because it's got a little camera in it or something like this. You've got those types of digital options. But you have a whole community who do not own cars, but would like to pay for the use of a car periodically. And with enough scale, could you imagine that there is a revenue stream for those in ownership to provide the services to those who want to use them when the owner is not using them? It's not groundbreaking as a commercial model. In fact, it's very, very basic. And the key to making it work is, can you digitalize the middle? Can you easily find out where those vehicles are, when they're available, and can you match the availability of the stock with the need for the flow? So that's quite a long-term vision as to maybe there's an opportunity out there. You don't get to this type of model overnight, but one of the things that Arval has chosen to do is to launch its own telematics solution in-house. And I'm very fortunate to be president of Artel, innovative name, Arval, Tel for telematics. But anyway, the marketing department weren't involved in that one. So we have Artel, and we call the product Arval Active Link. And basically, we've chosen to master this technology, not because we want to master telematics itself, but if you go back to the previous image, we do see a future in having the connection between the car and the services that we provide. And we see that connection being through the telematics platform. So we source the component parts, we put them together, and we collect the data, analyze the data, and we then present the data. And the model means that we see advantages, sure, for our customers, of course, traditional advantages that you get with these types of boxes and the data and the advice that it can give. But also for ourselves, it gives us an opportunity to learn what the data is telling us. It also, if we take that data into our operational processes, then we have more accurate and more timely data, in which case it gives us a greater reactivity. And if you think of the importance of having accurate mileage for many of our processes, this is key to us. And it also allows us to have a lot of data to identify other products and services that may be appropriate for upsell and cross-sell activity. So that's the first thing that we chose to do. It's a real foundation level. The other thing that we have looked at is collaborating with other parts of our group. We're part of BNP Paribas, it's a major global banking group, which has many divisions. And the Reinvent Paris project was something led by our real estate division, and it was a major investment in terms of looking at what the future of the city environment could look like in a global and CSR incentivized way. And with Arval, Autopartage is our car-sharing scheme in Arval, France. We put in 11 cars, okay, 11 cars. But real estate won this deal, and the comments from the judges were about the innovative car-sharing solution in their real estate scheme. So what that says to me is that the city planners really are looking for people who can come forward with solutions to help them deal with the problems in their cities today and, more importantly, tomorrow. And finally, we are entering into new partnerships. New partnerships in selected markets, and that's an advantage when you are operating in many markets, because it's not a one-size-fits-all. In the Dutch market, we have launched a mobility solution. It's an integrated solution with a card that also links all of the public transport. You can have bicycle renting as well, and you can have car sharing and car leasing. And it's a points mean prizes type system, which is quite popular in terms of the link with flexible benefits and the allowance of mobility budgets. It's not for everywhere, but the taxation rules in the Netherlands make it very interesting also. We do see generally a lot of interest in a survey that's been done, we saw across Europe, but very specifically in Netherlands and soon to follow in Belgium. Oops. So, our product development steps. For us, it's very important to collaborate inside and outside of the industry because these are new technologies and new and interesting ways of working. Involving all the company, we set up what we called a challengers group. So it's new, bright, young people in the company to come and challenge us at the comics level about what they thought was important, and that's been really interesting. It's important to test. I'm very glad I didn't take a photograph of our innovation lab because it was nothing as neat as that one. My telematics business is in what we call the shed. It's in the centre of Paris, in a little area which is very, very popular with young techie guys. And they have post-its everywhere, wires everywhere, boxes everywhere, but they seem to be getting along fine. So we have our own innovation lab. It's really important to test and learn. And if it works, roll it out fast. If it's not working, fail fast, because you can spend a lot of money. And one of the things in projects is people don't like to stop them, because people get wedded to the project and they keep going. Maybe it's not a bad idea, it's just that the time isn't right. So, in conclusion, digitalisation we see is absolutely vital. But when I looked at the two videos that were played in the introduction this morning, I actually think they're both right. They're both right. Because it depends on how you segment. From a marketing point of view, from a lead generation point of view, I think most of us segment in terms of SME, mid, large, maybe international, maybe public sector, probably something a little like that. In the small and mid sector, digitalisation is very, very important in terms of lead generation. Search engine optimization is key, and we've invested in a new website recently, which completed rollout last year. The website, in terms of design, you either like it or you don't like it. Believe me, at our comics we have a lot of discussions. But behind that, we upgraded the technology. And in Spain, overnight, we increased the landing in terms of people landing on that page from the natural search engines, 20%, overnight. No other change. So for relatively small investments and choosing the right technologies, you can make a big difference in terms of lead generation. This is very, very important in the SME business. The vast majority of our direct business is internet-based now, lead generation. But if we look at the bottom there, the client-driven, I think this comes back to what we saw earlier. The offer needs to match the needs. And there will be digitalisation that will augment the offers we have today. And that was one of the views we had. We talked there about the van driver. Okay, it's not a revolution, but there are certainly digital opportunities. But we have digital opportunities also that will really disrupt, like we saw the usership model. So it's really important to stop segmenting by the number of vehicles that the client has, and to start segmenting by who wants what and for what purpose, in which country and which culture, and where geographically they are, city or rural. So on that, that's some insight into our thinking, and if there are any questions.